Hello and welcome back to this channel. My name is Leigh. In today's video I want to talk about all the books I read in February. Today without makeup because I got my eyebrows done and I'm not supposed to do any water on it, and I have time now to film this video. February was a really good reading month. I was in a reading slump for most part of it, but then in the end I got back into reading, and you'll see in a moment why I did. But in the end I read a total of six books. Technically I only read 4 books, but I will get to that in a second. My average rating was 4.8 and I read around 2,228 pages. I had 1 sports star. This was the worst rating of the month, and the rest is 5 stars. And so I will talk about the books now, and I'm so excited to share with you what I read in the whole month. The first book is Hellbent by Bardugo. This was my 4th star of this month, my worst rating. So 9,000 is the first book, and 9,000 is about Alex, who got into Yale because she can see ghosts, and this is like really rare. These sorority houses have also magic powers, and to control them she joins Leigh, who takes control of them to see that they don't mess their magical stuff up. And while she's there, something happens, especially to her partner, Daniel Arlington, and he goes missing, and there's some murder happening on the campus, and she tries to figure out what the hell is going on. And we waited 2 years for Hellbent, the next book in the series, to figure out more what's going on. And I need to say, I don't think this book was bad. I really enjoyed reading it. But I was also a little bit disappointed, but just a little bit. So we get a lot of more information in Hellbent, what happened, what's going on, and especially around the incident, what happened to Darlington and why he is gone missing, where is he, and how they get them back. And so everything happens, but also, I don't know, I wanted more. You know what I mean? I liked it. I can't wait for the next book coming around, because it's supposed to be a trilogy or 4 books. And I also think there's a novella planned. I heard that rumor, I don't know, but I'm really excited to read more of In This World, definitely, but I also expected a little bit more. It's hard to say what I expected, but it's still a good book. I would still recommend the books to you if you're like a fantasy murder mystery reader. And now we go to my 5 stars. So the first 5 star is, I think, a surprise a little bit. I read The Barbarians Hope by Rubyred Dixon. This is the 10th book in the Ice Planet Barbarian series. It's about a character that we already know from the previous books, and it's about 2 of the barbarians. It's not a human barbarian, it's the 2 barbarians. And it's a second chance romance. When they first got together, she got pregnant and lost the child. The grief afterwards, the reason why they drifted apart and are no longer in a relationship together. And the whole book is a second chance romance, them getting back together. And also it talks a lot about the grief that both characters still experience, even though the death was 3 years ago, I think. I mean, the loss of a child is nothing that you can ever overcome. I think from time to time it gets easier. I don't know. I never lost a child after it was born. So this was really sad. It was a really sad book. I cried a lot doing this, because I think Rubyred Dixon did a great job to describe the grief of the characters and the depression, and it was really hard to read, and I really loved the book for that, how they talked about this, and I rooted for them, and this is why in the end I give this 5 stars. It was beautiful. So in the next 3 books, I talk about them in one. I reread the whole Hunger Games trilogy. And this is the reason why it's technically not 6 books, it's 4 books, because I read the Kindle book, the all books in one. So it counts on Goodreads as 1 book, because I read I read it in one book, but in the end it's still, I read all 3 of them. By the way, I have the German editions here. This is how they look like in Germany. So the first one, Hunger Games, Catching Fire and Mockingjay. I loved the books back then when I first read them. I think I read them when they got out in Germany, a little bit afterwards because I was dependent on my library back then. And then I read them and I loved them. And I reread them from time to time. And I think last month was also one where I was really in a reading slump and I didn't want to read a new book. And I wanted to read something again that I already loved. And so this is why I'm reading the Hunger Games trilogy again. And each book is so good. It starts with Hunger Games when you first experience the world. I think I would say Hunger Games is the weakest book of all of them. I still gave it 5 stars because my love for the series is so high that I couldn't get over it to give this less than 5 stars. So I loved it for Katniss being this sassy character, the motivations why she volunteered for her sister, and it was such a beautiful backstory from her, a tragic, beautiful story, and then also the relationship with Peter. And I think the movie adaptations are a good movie adaptation, I would say. Of course they didn't include everything from the books in there because it would be so much. The sad part about the movie adaptation is that the movies didn't really show how much of a character Peter actually is. I think in the movies you think he's like this weak character, and Katniss is the person who pulls him up and helps him. But he's also such a good character, where Katniss is good at fighting with actually a weapon, with the bow and the arrow. Peter's choices of words is so good that this is actually a weapon itself, and it's amazing. So we have Hunger Games, a banger, actually. I can go home to the girl that I love because she's here with me. To book 2, the victory journey, how they are trying to convince everyone that they're totally in love, because they actually are, but Katniss didn't realize it yet. To the Quell, where if it weren't for the baby, and then the last one, Mockingjay. Mockingjay is always the book where I break out into tears. The last chapter of the book, Mockingjay, I cried my eyes out. I was sobbing. I was sitting on my sofa, sobbing with tears for 1 hour straight, because I couldn't even read anymore, because there was so much tears in my face that I couldn't even see the words in the book anymore, because I cried so much. And also not only the last chapter, also the chapters before, how the Katniss is in this deep depression of after what happened in the first 2 Hunger Games, and how they got out, and the loss of Peter, and how they're trying to get him back, in the whole grief, because she wanted to grieve, she wanted to be in that depression, but she couldn't, because there's actually war going on. So she pushes herself forward and forward and forward to the point where she's like, okay, I don't want to be here anymore. It was so good. I'm sorry that I'm spoiling everything now, but the books are also really old. Like the first one, Hunger Games, came out 2009. So I think the book is now 12 years old. If you haven't read it yet, why? This is my actually question, why? And if you have read it, I'm just a totally fan. And I loved it. And also I'm like, after reading the books again, I watched the movies again. And now I'm deep in a TikTok algorithm where it only shows me Hunger Games edits, which is fun, actually fun. And I cried a lot again. So yeah, these were the 3 books that I read. And the last book that I read was also a reread for me. And this is Rubyred by Kerstin Gier. Kerstin Gier is Rubyred as my... I think Rubyred, the whole trilogy, was the first book series after Harry Potter that I actually really loved. I had a presentation in 5th grade about this book, and I reread it, also 5-star for me. Do I think the book, I would like the book now if I read it for the first time? I don't think so, that it would be the best book for me. But this brings up so much memories of books that I loved, and also this book, it was my whole personality. I wanted to be a time traveler. So what's going on in Rubyred? What's going on? So we have Gwendolyn, it's this comic picture here, and her family is special because in the family and a different family there's a time traveler gene, and everyone thinks that her cousin Charlotte has this time traveler gene because there's a prophecy, and the prophecy actually counts the days to the next day where a time traveler is born. And everyone thinks Charlotte is the person because she was born on this day, and Gwendolyn was born after that, after the day after. So everyone thinks Charlotte is it, and Charlotte gets trained and get the education to be a time traveler, because you can't just travel in time without any knowledge. You need to know what happened each time period and all that kind of good stuff. And Gwendolyn just lives her life, and one day she travels in time back, and she was like totally surprised like everyone else, and it turns out that she has the time traveler gene, and now she needs to travel in time with this asshole Gideon, who is like really mean to her, but she actually thinks he's hot. By the way, he's Gideon. It's actually not really good for comic art, but better than two persons on the cover, let's say it like that. And they're traveling now in time, and no one wants to take Gwendolyn anything about this world. They just want to have their education, but there's a whole rituals behind it and a whole group of people that kind of like a cult around the time traveler. And she wants to figure out what's the issue here, because obviously there's a mystery going on and that everything is perfectly fine, that they all do, that it is. And she wants to figure it out, but no one tells her, so she tries to do this on her own and figures a lot of stuff out. And I love the books. Honestly, it was this book, this was such a quick read for me. It was like butter, smooth like warm butter that runs through your fingers. This was how I read this. It was like page after page after page, and I was sucked into this world again. And it's a beautiful story. I loved it. It's really fun, and I never read any book like this again. The same with the Hunger Games trilogy. This is why they are my all-time favorites. So 5-star for me, and in the next month, my March wrap-up, I will talk about the other two books that I read in this world. By the way, fun fact on the side, this book got a movie adaptation, the book series. There are 2 movies out, but they're bad. They're actually really bad movies, especially the first one, Rubyred, is a really bad movie. And I can remember that I was so excited about the movies because we have the I also like the actors that they casted for the movie, because we have in Germany we don't have a lot of actors. It's not like Hollywood where they have 5,000 actors and we have 5 that you see in every movie. We have more than 5, but you have the same 3 actors, female actors, who play teenager roles in movies, and when they need 3, it's always the 3 together. It's like, it's a whole, there are only 3, and also we have, I think, 3 men who always play teenager roles, and if they needed 3 female teenagers, 3 male teenagers, they picked out the 6 together. They also lived they lived together for a long time, and they were also in relationships together. It's like really fun to see how they're all grown up, but to notice back then that they all live together because they're always casted in the same movies. It's actually fun for me. And I was so excited because I liked the actors, and I was so excited for the movie, and I got in the movie in Rubyred, and it was so horrible that I actually wrote an email to Kerstin Gier and told her how she could do that. How could she do that to let them make this movie so bad? And she actually texted me back and said that she didn't have any say in how they scripted the book for the movie, and she's actually sorry. And after that, the second movie was closer to the book again. So everything in the first movie was turn over again and they started fresh in the second movie. It was fun. It was fun. So I couldn't be the only one who complained that this movie was actually bad. So every time now I hear someone saying like, oh, this is such a bad book to movie adaptation, I'm like, did you watch Rubyred by any chance? Because this was an actually bad book to movie adaptation. That's it. This is every book, every 6 books that I read in February. I hope March is, what it means, I hope March is a little bit better. I'm actually totally fine how the month turned out, and then I would just reread books instead of reading one of the books that I own, new and it's unread, because I was really in a bad mood. I got COVID again, I studied for tests. I couldn't write a test because I got COVID, and then I wrote a test. So actually I'm fine with just rereading books because I was in a really bad mood and I needed something I knew I love. So yeah. So tell me in the comments how your reading month was, and then I hope you have a wonderful time whenever you watch this, and then I will see you in my next video. Bye!